When you go to work or you go shopping, do you think your company or the place you're shopping, are they doing a good job or are they doing a bad job at helping to keep you safe from COVID-19? We're going to look at that, as well as the new study that just came out in Lancet about hydroxychloroquine saying it does not work. Not only that, but it actually provides higher mortality. So let's see where that data takes us. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Chris Martenson here with your coronavirus update, aka the honey badger virus. Why? Because it's a fearsome foe. It'll escape from almost any enclosure. And 120, that's the big day count here on our reporting. And by the way, I'm going to be starting to relax on the daily part of this. So I'm going to take that part out of here real soon, maybe even right now, because it looks like our work is largely done in terms of really parsing through exactly what's going on with this. If you want to follow me more, and of course I'm at my website, Peak Prosperity, every single day, but it's been a huge output of effort to produce these daily videos, and I'm just going to have to back off. I'm aiming for twice a week, and I'll pick the days soon, but this one is going to get you through the weekend. Today is Friday, May 22nd. Let's start with the email of the day. I love this one. And we got so many. By the way, I'm going to try and get through all of them. We got so many good ones, from Australia, from Alaska, from New Zealand, from Iowa, from all over the place. So at any rate, I wish it was so hard trying to pick which one to put up here today, but this is the one I did pick. And for no good reason, I just had to flip a coin at the end of it all. They were all so good. This one says, Dear Chris and Adam, I've been following your work since watching the original crash course in 2008. Hey, thanks, Adam. You have been following us for quite a while. Your unbiased, clear, and concise presentation of facts, combined with logical ideas and analysis, has literally changed my life. I see the world in a different way. I understand stuff that I was never previously aware of. 4 years ago, my wife and I moved to a small farm where we can act on this new understanding. We are making giant leaps towards sustainability and independence with off-grid electricity and a garden full of fruit and vegetables. Our new way of life is fulfilling and wonderful. I just want to thank you for your part in all this. We are also, of course, in a place where we are much safer from the virus and less impacted by the consequences of it. I worry about the future, but have less reason to be worried. Keep up the good work. I hope to meet you one day. Adam from Wales, UK. Adam, likewise, I would love to meet you as well, and your wife, and see your place if somehow the future allows that. Meanwhile, we'll just be brothers in arms and spirits. Evie and I are here busy in first-yearitis on our own little place in the country, and first-yearitis means we just bought it this year, and so we are up to our eyeballs in all the things you have to do in the first year, trying to take a place that didn't have quite the things I wanted to see in it. That includes, what do we have in so far? Got grapevines in, turning over the garden, got a pretty good garden going. A lot of work. I'm in there every day turning over more soil to create beds. Got 7 fruit trees in. I pruned the 10 fruit trees that were already here that were badly in need of that. We got our 30 chickens in and a new chicken house, on and on and on. So just a million things to do, but in a few years, we'll be bearing the fruits from that. So at any rate, let's weigh in and see. I loved your email, Adam. Thank you so much. And again, I wish I could have gotten to all the other ones. Let's check in with the honey badger, see how the honey badger felt about that. Yep, honey badger loved it too. So that's great. So we're in agreement. And as well, honey badger and myself loved all of the other emails that came in. Some things that are a little bit less fun to look at are things like this. Found this over on Reddit on the Collapse subreddit here. This was posted by Rothmal. The user Rothmal says, company just told us we could eat cake and die. Management. Thanks you guys for coming back to work. I know how difficult it must be right now. Also, our sales are up 40% over last year, so we're going to be very busy. Any questions? Me. Will we be receiving any hazard pay? We're still discussing that at this moment, but rest assured your safety is our number one priority. So what are we going to do different? You'll be doing the same work, except you'll be wearing these 20-cent masks we bought you. Is that all? Well, we recommend you clean your mask every 3 days. Here's another typical sort of experience relayed by somebody. I manage a small warehouse. We have 3 employees, including myself, in the warehouse. We just got an email from upper management saying that the company is rotating work from home for the foreseeable future. However, we don't qualify. Oh, and they won't provide masks or cleaning. And the 10% pay cut. But we should be grateful that we're still employed. this sort of boring dystopia. We're reading more and more and more things like this. It's happening all over the place. These are people who are working at private companies. Hey, but maybe if you worked for a state department, maybe that would be better. Nope. David McCowan here sent this over on my Twitter feed, says, wow, not a mask in the bunch. Look at that. Nope, no masks anywhere. Who is this? Well, this is the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental something like that, coordination center. So a big part of the COVID-19 response is logistics under DHEC's Agency Coordination Center. Every day, the logistic team works with the division, state, and local readiness to ensure the agency and its partners are prepared to respond to emergencies. But they didn't. Well, they got nice handbags. Those look kind of cool. But I don't know what's going on here. So this is a pretty typical experience. So what I want to do is I want to contrast this with actually what's going on in China. Say what you will about China, their response to this whole thing. Were they lying about their statistics? Yeah, I think we could give them low marks in a variety of ways. But one place you can give China really high marks is that when they decided it was time to kick this virus's butt, they went at it full force. And by the way, China levied very strong penalties if you were outside of the rule set, and they have really strong rules inside the workplace. So somebody sent me this video. It's from a management place from a company in China. And I thought we would just sort of listen through this and go through this because this is how I think this is a gold standard. I think this is what you need to do. And it's really well explained. We won't go through all 9 minutes of it, but just enough of it to get the flavor of it. So let's just go through this real quick. Very instructive. Let's start.
There we go. Welcome back to Star Rapid. We've been back at work since the 21st of February, and over the coming weeks, a lot of you are going to be going back to work as well. Now, the key to going back to work is to stay safe. And there's only one way of staying safe, and that is to implement a whole bunch of epidemic prevention measures inside your offices, in your factories, and so on. So what I'm going to do today is I'm actually going to go through 6 main categories of things that you may need to do or choose to do that will protect you as you all go back to work. Now those 6 categories are health checks, social distancing, personal cleanliness, no touching of anything, disinfection of facilities, and rules around eating and smoking, for example. So I'm going to tell you what we're doing here in China. And it's not just my company. This is every business in China is mandated to do this by law.
All right, did you hear that? Every business in China is mandated to do this 6 checkpoints that you have to go through. I just want you to think that, just contrast what you're about to hear with these people in South Carolina, with this person's experience, with this person's experience, with those horrifying videos you've seen of people purposely coughing on other people because they're angry about their plight here in America, or stores that have put up, you can't come into our store if you're wearing a mask. Let's just contrast all of that nonsense with this no BS sort of approach that we're seeing going on in China. All right, so let's start just listen to the quality of the information that's being presented here, and how it actually relies on data, and the data are sourced, and it all makes a lot of sense and is very logical. That's why I'm pointing this out. Let's go now into social distancing. I skipped over the first one, which was health checks. And by the way, as everybody, no matter whether they're top management or bottom of the company, everybody who comes in the front door gets a temperature check. If they have a hot reading at all, they go into a special room, and another team from in the city comes and evaluates and assesses that person if they have any sort of a fever at all. So at least they're starting with that. Everybody starts with a health check, and of course everybody's self-monitoring for any other symptoms that might indicate early COVID exposure. So that would be things like loss of sense of smell, taste, excessive runny nose, things like that. So they have a procedure in place for that. Part 2 is this social distancing. So let's listen on this part real quick here.
Now I want to talk about social distancing. Now, social distancing isn't just about keeping away from each other. It's also about masks. Even if you can't buy an N95, you can't get surgical masks, you can't get something fancy like this exercise mask, just anything over your face, it works. So how does it work? Well, it works to protect you from me if I am sick.
What? Did you hear that? That's perfect. Of course, that's why we all wear masks. It's because you don't know who's sick, and it doesn't protect you so much as it protects you from me. That's exactly right.
If I'm sick and I cough, that can go, we already know that can go up to 6 meters. That's 20 feet. We know from studies that were done both in China and in the US and in Europe that people as far away as 4.5 meters can get sick from coronavirus from someone who is not wearing a mask. This allows you to get as close as 1.5 meters quite safely. Now, the second thing it does is it...
Listen to this. This is perfect right here. This next part, this is where I just really sat up and said, oh my gosh, how is it possible to have this level of information here, but we still don't have it in the United States and many other Western countries in Europe?
Lowers the viral load if you do catch it. Let's say you don't have a mask on, they don't have a mask on, they cough, you get a full face of this stuff, and it gives you a high initial viral load. That means that you're going to get sicker faster because of the exponential growth of the virus. If you start with a lower number, it takes a long time to build up to be a big number. You start with a big number and boom, you get hit like a sledgehammer.
Did you get that? Yeah. Oh, the initial load, the inoculum, it matters. So if we're all wearing masks, then we have a much better chance of starting with a small load if we happen to get sick. It's the number 2 reason for wearing a mask. So this guy's just ticking the boxes. He's getting it exactly right. But this is part of the common knowledge in China at this point in time. That's the critical part here.
Now, we have been told that we must, even when we're wearing masks, we must keep up to 1.5 meters between ourselves, about 6 feet, 5 feet, at all times. There can be no more than 3 people in a meeting at any one time. Also, we went over to using Skype and Microsoft Teams a lot. We also went on to staggered days for what you might call non-essential workers. That is people who don't need to physically be on site. So if you're an office-based business, that's quite easy to do. If you're a factory, of course, that's impossible. So what we had is all of our office workers basically working Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, half of them, and then the other half working Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and the off days they were at home working.
Right. So that all makes a lot of sense. They're just trying to minimize the contact between people, keep the spacing between them. Half of them work from home on some days, half work from home the other days. And then they have all the masks and all the training around the masks and everything. So social distancing includes the masks, includes the distancing, includes the keeping the meetings to a really low density, keeping the workspace to as low a density of humans as possible. All very sensible. Makes a lot of sense. In fact, I become relieved when I hear that because I'm like, oh my gosh, that just makes sense. Here in the United States, we actually have people who claim to be doctors and may even be doctors purporting that wearing a mask is dangerous because it'll build up carbon dioxide in your blood and other such nonsense. I mean, it's such complete hogwash from any standpoint of anything logical, anything known, anything data sourced. It's just people have a belief system that they don't want to wear masks, and so they go out and they just make up stuff, or they grab data that loosely confirms it and ignore a bunch of data that doesn't confirm it, on and on and on. All right. But in China, there's no such confusion about that at this point in time. And so they're taking a very different approach on that. All right. Let's carry on because there's this next part, which I thought was pretty interesting. It's around disinfecting. So let's take a quick listen to this.
Now we'll talk about disinfection of facilities. 2 times every day, we have a contractor come in and they spray the entire facilities, inside and out. The factory, the offices, even all of the car park and green areas outside to kill off the virus. Now we're using chlorine dioxide in a 1:80 with water ratio. We're also using peracetic acid in a 1:100 ratio. Now, the thing you have to be very careful about is that you're not spraying your products, particularly plastics, even some of the metals. Also, 3 times per day we went around and we're using alcohol to wipe the doorknobs, the handles, the meeting room tables, all wiped with alcohol at least 3 times per day. All the doors and windows should be kept open. Whatever you do, do not use air conditioning unless it's got some kind of HEPA filter or viral filter on it, which only seem to exist on aircraft nowadays. It really does move the coronavirus about, and it keeps it inside the building. You don't want that. Doors and windows open, get a nice draft going through.
All right. I'm putting all of this up here because if you wanted to bring something to your company and say, hey, here's what we ought to be doing if we really wanted to be gold standard about this, be very safe, you would take them this particular training video. And I'm going to skip over the part about eating and smoking. I think you can figure it out. It's appropriate distancing. There's staggering schedules that ultimately serve to have as few people in one spot at one time as possible, right? So that's really the substance of it. I skipped over a couple other pieces. They had 6 key things that they're going after here. And every one of them, if you listen to the whole thing, it's only a 9-minute video. Every single one of those 6 things, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's logical. Oh my gosh, I wish my company was doing that. Why aren't we doing that? Here's the deal. China hasn't been messing around with this, and it looks to me like this is a gold standard way to go about dealing with this thing. But it's the conclusion of this that really caught me here. Let's listen in now just for the conclusion, because this gentleman is just nailing it, just getting it right. And I think we're going to get a clue as to how and why that might be.
What you have to remember is that this coronavirus cannot read, it can't look at YouTube, it doesn't know about politics, it doesn't know about this party versus that party, it doesn't care less. It is a dumb, viral, RNA-based program that leaps from human to human. And it's going to kill the rich, it's going to kill the poor, it's going to kill the bosses, it's going to kill the workers, it will kill anyone it can get into. It gets into one cell, it replicates millions of times. When you have it, you are shedding billions of viruses. This is why they call it the honey badger virus.
What? Say what? The person who sent me this didn't even know that was in there. I was watching this. I literally jumped out of my chair when that happened. The honey badger virus. All right. So these videos that I've been producing have had their impact, and I'm glad to know that they have. And I was surprised, but not that surprised when I heard that happen here at this point on the video. It's about 7 minutes in, almost 8 minutes in, because the gentleman has been so logical and complete, and was using data and had built this case. And it's interesting that all of the articulations around how and why you're going to keep a workplace safe have been adopted by the Chinese, and they have very, very low levels of outbreaks at this point in time. I think that every country, every company that wants to really get ahead of this and be able to keep the honey badger virus away and out of their workplace, they're going to be following basically everything that's laid out in this video, all 6 of these steps. Let's carry on.
It's going to get in and it's going to get out, and there's not a lot you can do to stop it. But if you do all of this, at least you stand a chance of slowing it down and getting the R0 below 1, which means that eventually the epidemic will fade away and die out.
Correct. That's the point of all of this. So you really want to get the R0 below 1. So look at what just happened here in this particular training video. They were talking about sensible things. There's a completely understood set of practices and parameters that they're going to follow, and processes that they're common across all of China. Everybody has to follow them. If you don't follow them, there'll be some sort of consequences. So we have carrot and stick in this whole thing. The carrot is, hey, you get to be open and work. The stick is, hey, we might come in and close you down if you're not doing it right. This is the correct way to go about it, of course, is it's a virus. So we know how to beat viruses, and everybody wears a mask. We're going to have to clean much more than we're used to. We're going to have to change some behaviors around social distancing and how we eat and how many people come into the office. But if you do those things, you can beat this thing, and China is beating this thing. So I'm just thrilled to see that there is a common sense approach that can actually cut through. And you know what? He's absolutely right. That honey badger virus, it just doesn't care. It just doesn't care. It doesn't care if you're rich, doesn't care if you're poor. All it cares about, are you going to be sloppy in your approach to this, because if you are, it's going to escape your enclosure and come out and start roaring again. I think the United States is going to have a really hard time of it. I think some other countries are going to have a hard time of it because we can't seem to just get our heads around. We can't even agree on common sense stuff. That's why you're listening to this channel. That's why I put this in. I'm really thrilled to find that some of this logic has gone out as far as it has. I'm really thrilled with the emails of the day and people saying how much it's impacted, because it means we're part of a really important tribe of people. In fact, this is something I just wrote for my subscribers and at Peak Prosperity about that aspect of how important it is that we find each other and that we know that each other exists, because we are the people who are capable of having this thing called common sense. We know we like logic. We like things to make sense in circumstance A, also to make sense in circumstance B. It can't be that hydroxychloroquine is this ultra-safe malarial drug, but suddenly it's the most dangerous thing ever once we want to use it for a different thing that's competing with $1,000 a pill, fancy brand new pharmaceutical intervention, something like that. So it's really important that we know that each other exists. And that's what this represents. That's why I put these videos out. Really, that's my payday out of all of this, is that I get to meet the rest of you. We're assembling around this. And I do think there's a better future coming. And I know that we're going to have a really important role in how that future unfolds, because it's time for common sense, for logic and reason to come back into the conversation. It's time for us to replace managers with actual leaders. And those leaders are going to have to operate on imperfect information in an important way and move quickly. But, that's possible. It's totally possible. All right, so I'm going to show you. Oh, this is just so disappointing. I have to go through this one more time. But we're going to do it anyway. All right. Remember from April 27th, I said, how do you conduct hydroxychloroquine study? It's got to be randomized trial, full stop. Treatments begun early as possible, as soon as COVID diagnosis or upon appearance of suggestive symptoms. Doses are recorded as well as dosing frequency. Got to know that. Zinc included, and blood levels are tracked so you can begin to correlate those parameters. If somebody's taking zinc but their levels are still low and they have a worse outcome, that would factor in. If it makes no difference, that would be great to know. We just need to know these things. And then maybe plus minus is azithromycin. I mean, if you really want to parse it all out. Otherwise, include it. But if there's concerns that azithromycin has a hard effect and HCQ has a hard effect, I would say just leave it out. Do the minus on that thing. At any rate, why am I bringing all that back up again? Because I'm sure you heard about it. Big splash came out. And let me make this just a little bigger while I can. This big thing came out in Lancet today. And basically it says that hydroxychloroquine did not work. In fact, worse than that, it was made things worse and led to a worse outcome. And they say here, HCQ or chloroquine, often in combination with a second-generation macrolide, are being widely used for treatment, despite no conclusive evidence of their benefit. Right. Although generally safe when used for approved indications such as these things, the safety and benefit of these treatment regimens are poorly evaluated in COVID-19. And then they went on to say, actually, there's a higher incidence of heart troubles, very serious heart troubles, and a higher outcome of death. So that's not good. And if that's what the data really says, then that's what it really says. But this has been put out as a big study. It's not really, it's an observational study. So what they did was they went back into patient records and then tried to pull out and tease out, was there an impact for hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin? And if so, what was that? Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing to do. In fact, you can learn a lot of things from retrospective studies like that. So let's burrow into it really quickly here. First off, evidence before this study. So putting the research in context. This is right out of the PDF for this particular thing. There's the link for it. We'll, of course, put the link down below as well. They say here, we searched Medline via PubMed for articles published up to April 21st using the keywords novel coronavirus, nCoV, COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2 therapy, hydroxychloroquine, chloroquine, and macrolide. So they're pulling all these papers out. And moreover, we screened preprint servers such as MedRxiv for relevant articles and consulted the web pages of organizations such as the U.S. National Institute of Health and WHO. Hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine used with or without a macrolide are widely advocated for the treatment of COVID-19. So that's what they did. And their use is based on small, uncontrolled studies in the absence of evidence from randomized controlled trials, which, by the way, we're still waiting on. We're still waiting on those. So at any rate, concerns have been raised, they say here, that these drugs or their combination with macrolides could result in electrical instability and predispose patients to ventricular arrhythmias. Whether these drugs improve outcomes or are associated with harm in COVID-19 remains unknown. So that's the research and context. So they said, let's look into the patient records and let's see what we got. But you have to understand, this wasn't a study where they gave hydroxychloroquine to patients. These are already patients who somehow got it or didn't get it in a medical context, and then they pulled those patient records out, and they're trying to tease out of those what can we see. Now, you can learn things from these sorts of studies. Sometimes they have big limitations. But I want you to understand one thing first. Notice they say here they searched extensively through all of the literature. Now, you know what I would have found if I searched the literature? I would have found a couple things. First, that the timing of this really matters. So I would want to have controlled for timing, for sure, because the literature is full of that stuff saying, when we've presented a lot of that data, the data is very clear. It says, if you give this stuff too late, it doesn't make any difference at all. In fact, it may even hurt. So controlling for timing, obviously, that would be the first variable that would jump out. And the second variable that would jump out would be this thing called zinc, right? Those two things would really jump out, right? If anybody who's going through Medline and scouring and using these keywords, of course, they're going to run across the concept of zinc and timing. All right. What's kind of interesting is they controlled for a lot of things in this study, but when you search their entire article, their entire PDF for their study, and you search for the word zinc, you return 0. The total, somehow they went through a complete literature search and didn't run across the word zinc even enough to have discussed why in the discussion somewhere to say, we heard about zinc, but we decided not to include that because there wasn't enough data there, or it turns out nobody else was really looking at zinc, or we didn't have serum levels or something. But, we know it's important. We just chose not to, examine it for reasons X, Y, and Z. Nope, not a single mention of it. Just poof, chirping crickets, all right? The second thing is they did not control for timing of administration. So check this out. This is down from their findings. They say here, after controlling for multiple confounding factors. And by the way, I don't know how you control for these things. And by the way, every time you control for a confounding factor. So let's pick one. Baseline disease severity. Did all of these people, when they were assessing baseline severity, so let me back up. They say 14,880 patients were in the treatment groups. So this is from 96,000 patients. So they're scouring across multiple hospitals, multiple countries. And that means that when you're trying to control for something like baseline disease severity, was every country recording disease severity in the same way? Were they measuring the same parameters? Were, even if they were measuring the same parameters, were they scoring them the same? So, as a fever of 38.3, somebody's cutoff line. Was it 39.2, somebody else's cutoff line? Are those comparable? One group might think that oxygen saturation of 93% is the cutoff. Another one might think it's 90, right? You don't know. So the baseline severity, how would you actually control for that confounding factor? It's difficult. And by the way, that's each one of these places is a possible error where you could either introduce bias or error. So how you can control for confounding factors is actually really tricky. And look at how many they're controlling for: age, sex, race or ethnicity, body mass index, underlying cardiovascular disease and its risk factors, diabetes, underlying lung disease, smoking, immunosuppressed condition, and baseline disease severity. But the most important confounding factor is the one that's missing here, and that would have been timing. That's one of the first things I would have wanted to control for is, where in the symptomology did somebody actually get hydroxychloroquine? Was it within 1 day of receiving their first symptoms? Was it within 2 days? Where exactly in their disease progression relative to symptom onset did they actually get hydroxychloroquine? Because it could be that out of all of these 96,000 patients, all of these were people who had already presented to the hospital. And so the typical disease progression is you get exposed to this thing. 5 to 7 day incubation period. Another 7 days to 8 days before you finally say, wow, I feel bad enough, I better go to the hospital, right? And that by that time, you're already pretty far down the path. All right, and that's the part that really jumped out at me for that. And again, how is it possible that you can scan all of these things and you can go through this, a huge literature search and you don't come up with zinc or timing. I don't know how that happens in this day and age. I don't know, but it drives me a little bit nuts because those are the two variables. If I was a researcher blowing a lot of money on running a giant retrospective study and pawing through 96,000 records, that'd be one of the first things I'd want to do. But this is interesting. To their credit, and I will give them lots of credit for this, I always, as you know, I jump to the study limitations because that's where I kind of find out how honest and unbiased somebody's really being. If they really don't expose any limitations, and I can think of 3 off the top of my head, it's a bad sign. But they had some good ones in here. They say our study has several... Oops, wrong one there. Our study has several limitations. The association of decreased survival with hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine treatment regimens should be interpreted cautiously. Okay? Why is that? Due to the observational study design, again, this wasn't a direct study, it's observational. They're going retrospectively into patient records to try and see what they can observe and pull out. We cannot exclude the possibility of unmeasured confounding factors, although, and by the way, an unmeasured confounding factor might be time between symptom onset and administration of hydroxychloroquine. Although we have reassuringly noted consistency between the primary analysis and the propensity score matched analyses, doesn't mean a lot to me. Nevertheless, a cause and effect relationship between drug therapy and survival should not be inferred. Let me read that again. Nevertheless, a cause and effect relationship between drug therapy and survival should not be inferred. Right. So that's an interesting sort of a limitation there, and that jumps right out at me, and of course that should jump right out at you. Of course that didn't jump right out at anybody in the news because they are busy saying things like this. Fox News says it's now linked to increased risks of death. CNN large study finds drug Trump touted for, see, they're politicizing here, for COVID-19 is linked to greater risk of death and heart arrhythmia. So they are finding a cause and effect relationship in the media, of course, between drug therapy, survival, and all that. So that's going to happen. And of course, it is a little bit too much to expect the media sometimes to read all the way down into the study limitations. I get that, but that happens. All right. So let's go into this really quick. All your bases here, that's at Antarctic Stare right here, said, hey, look at this. The FDA super deadly. The FDA Adverse Events Reporting System, FAERS, is, look at this super deadly thing right here. Look at this, 13,998 death cases, 89,371 serious cases. This stuff is pretty bad. This is, this isn't hydroxychloroquine. It's aspirin, darn it. Oh, wait, where's hydroxychloroquine? Oh, here it is. Found it. Chloroquine, 82 and 626. Compare these two things. Can you even imagine what would be going on if the media got their hands on this information right now? And by the way, this isn't super awesome data because this is the FDA Adverse Events Reporting System. Doctors can put in adverse events. So could you. So could a journalist or anybody. It's just there to gather adverse events, and it's kind of like it's like a fire tower, looking out for smoke in the forest. It's if you see a lot of smoke, they might come and burrow in and start looking at it more closely. But it's not super solid data because anybody can report into it. But at any rate, just look at this. All these years, chloroquine's been there though, and anybody can report in anytime they want, including all the tens of thousands, if not millions, of people who are on it for rheumatoid arthritis. They're on it for lupus. They can report in, and they did. Look at this. The highest year, 98, was the biggest year. In 2018, there were some reports. Look at aspirin. Its biggest year would have been, I guess, 2016 with 12,272 reports clocking in around that. So at any rate, it's pretty clear that before, I'm sure this will just get stuffed. This year's going to be awful for adverse events here because now all of a sudden it's the most dangerous thing ever. You know what? When you get right down to it, I just think the honey badger virus just don't care. It just don't care about any of this stuff. So At any rate, I am not really. I think there's something interesting that came out of that big the observational study there on hydroxychloroquine. If it is showing that there are people definitively having more heart arrhythmias and that leads to a worse outcome, I think we can safely say hydroxychloroquine should not be administered once you're already in the hospital and you're past a certain point on that. And of course it shouldn't be, because it's not meant to be a post-viral infection treatment. It's really meant there for prophylaxis for sure. I think we're getting some solid data around that, and also early treatment if you can get it early. Those would be the two times. But I think by the time you've presented to the hospital because you're in pretty serious condition, that would not be the time. So I'm glad it reconfirmed that for us. I don't think I learned anything really new from that, but the media is busy drawing very different sort of conclusions from that right now. And by the way, I do think that there's way too much focus on treatment these days, and it's all about, which drug are we going to give and which vaccine and what's the race for the vaccine. It's like almost 100% of our efforts are on that. You probably heard $1.2 billion from the U.S. to drug maker to pursue the coronavirus vaccine. The one that I just pointed out from a couple of days ago, today's 22nd, from the 20th, we talked about that vaccine. And remember, it didn't really, it was sort of, that was the one that was the not really. It worked, but, the monkeys that they gave it to were not totally clearly, better. It was better, but we don't know. Anyway, it seems a little rushed, but the United States already tossed at $1.2 billion to secure 300 million doses off of that. That particular thing, which is the Oxford drug, I think is being pursued by AstraZeneca. But at any rate, real racing here. Look at this. U.S. plans massive coronavirus testing effort to meet year-end deadline. So all of that. But let's go even further than that. Let's look here. This is from the WHO, and they've just got here a few, just a list of things that's going on. So let's just take a quick peek here at some of the things going on for COVID-19 candidate vaccines as of the 20th of April, so a month ago. So you got the platform, the type of candidate vaccine, the developer, this all for COVID-19, current stage, phase 2, phase 1, wherever it is. Same platform as for non-coronavirus candidates. So somebody using an Ebola platform, it's an adenovirus type 5 vector, and here it is being, that one's being run. And then this one's a DNA vector here. It's being on this backbone, being run by Inovio. An inactivated COVID-19 candidate here. Another one by Sinovac. That one was in the news recently. You got this Moderna one here, which we talked about, which is an mRNA. And oh my God, there's 71 candidates in preclinical evaluation. These are the 5 that are in clinical right now. There's 71 in preclinical. And by the way, you're probably going to have to get used to an almost daily cadence of, oh my God, this new one by this company or that company, completely worked perfectly in vitro or all of that. But just look at them all. Look at them all. So there's lots and lots of efforts here, tons, billions and billions of dollars going into treatments. That's fine. I think we need a vaccine and all of that. But I just want to talk about the balance of this whole thing, because there's just page after page after page of all these different treatments. Just look at them all, right? That's all on the treatment side. But maybe there's just too much focus on that treatment. And so what if we instead focused more on everybody having their personal immune booster supplement system going on? These are the ones that I happen to use. Elderberry is a really important source of my maintenance. I take sometimes quercetin with zinc and with D3. Those are sort of my go-tos on a daily basis, with vitamin C in powder form. And also selenium. And should I ever get sick, I'm going to really pile on the NAC. This is not a bad thing to take anyway, but if you really think you're getting sick, you want to dial back the oxidative damage from the cytokine storm, and you're at home and you're doing the home treatment, I'm going to be using this stuff right here, and this stuff really, really piled on with that as well. But I think these, if we can treat the terrain, as the French say, if your body, no matter which of those million plus treatments you get, whether you're, somebody's cramming hydroxychloroquine down your throat, or you're getting a new vaccine, or it's some new fancy thing, or it's an immune modulator, or it's a steroid, those are all designed to help give your body a better than average chance so that your body can fight off the virus. Because that's ultimately what happens, is your body fights the virus, and then you become immune. And hopefully that immunity lasts for a long time. We're getting some data that suggests that may be true. I'm really hopeful. I think that's a good thing. How does your body fight stuff off? Well, because it has all the appropriate immune boosting and supplements and things like that. And so what I'm just pointing out here is that it seems like 99% of the effort out there is all about new vaccine. We got to get the vaccine, the new treatment. We got to get blah, 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 all that stuff. Where are the authorities of any particular government coming out and going, listen, people, everybody out there, I want your immune systems to be as strong as possible. That way, and if you wear masks, you'll get the lowest initial load or viral inoculum. If you do that, you have the best chance ever of being one of those people who gets COVID-19 and it's just barely the sniffles because you got a low load, your body had a chance to fight it off, you've got a really strong immune system, not a problem, right? Instead, it seems like we're doing almost none of that, and it's all about the treatment. And that's just the wrong balance. It should be evenly split at a minimum. All right. So the conclusions for today, to truly subdue this honey badger virus, you have to be thorough. You got to be diligent. You have to be steady. And you got to use all these agreed upon practices and processes like those ones that we saw in that manufacturing company out of China. They're doing it all absolutely correct. Many US, UK, EU companies doing an extremely poor job of managing things on their own. Some are doing great. Not that many. Some. But mileage really varies in this story. A lot of them are just doing really poorly. And again, that's because we have poor managers in these countries. Good leadership would say, here's how you're going to do it. Everybody's got to follow these 6 things. If everybody follows these 6 things, they can stay in business. If you refuse to follow these 6 things, you're not in business because, that's what we're going to do here because we want to get the R naught below 1 so that we can all go back to work. But guess what? You can do both of those at the same time. You can go back to work and have your cake and have your R naught below 1. Both are possible. There are truly insane levels demonizing HCQ. Hydroxychloroquine is unsafe right now. I find these views ungrounded. They're not really based on available data. It's just a mystery to me that hydroxychloroquine was ridiculously safe for all the decades leading up to now, and all of a sudden it's just like this really highly unsafe thing. That just doesn't make sense. It's insane, actually, to me, because it's ungrounded so extremely. It's just floating away as an idea. I continue to lose faith in the state of science and many scientists right now, also institutions ranging from Stanford to the CDC. Stanford, because I've read 3 separate things out of there, starting with that serological study to 2 other things that were just so ridiculously biased, ungrounded, and poor science that I'm just like I literally, somebody sent me something and said, oh, but Stanford says, and I found my first instinct was, I was like, oh, forget about it. And I know that's unfair. So I shouldn't throw the entire institution, all of its people under the bus. But that was my response. And that's one of the I think things that companies, individuals, institutions, government agencies needs to think through very, very carefully. Because when you have one of your representatives ding the trust in your institution, they basically eat into the capital that your institution has, the trust capital that it has. And it's up to that institution to police itself. And they either support that researcher or official who made the bad statement or did the poor research, or they don't, or they distance themselves from them and maybe even, have consequences for doing something like that or whatever. But at any rate, I haven't seen these institutions doing anything but remaining like chirping crickets about this stuff. So forget about it. That's how I roll. Maybe it's unfair. Maybe it's a little harsh, but I think it's truly authentic to who I am. And I think others are that way as well. I think there's too much focus on treatments right now and way too little on prevention. It's all on the drugs, the vaccines. It's less on boosting the immune system, which is called prepping the terrain of your body. And as well, come on, this isn't that hard. If everybody wears a mask, we're literally 80% of the way there. We don't have to shut the whole economy down so that we can get the R naught below 1. That's not how you do it. We can have both at the same time. This is just ridiculous that we're not having both at the same time. Did you see in that China manufacturing video from the Star company? They've been doing this since February 21st. It's May 22nd. So February, March, April to May. I mean, China's been operating for 3 months while we're still in my country battling over how are we going to go back to open things up, but without any of those 6 things in play, without people understanding the basics of hygiene, without people being in alignment around use of masks across the country. Luckily, in my part of the world, they are. Over here in Western Massachusetts, everywhere you go, everybody's wearing a mask unless they're really, really far away from somebody else and they're jogging or something. But otherwise, every store I've been into, it's 100%. And so that all feels good. By the way, if you want to understand what's happening in the economy and the Fed and all that other stuff, check out this webinar we've got here. Follow that link and you will find that. And that's with, again, some of my favorite people. That's a lot of fun. So if you find time on your hands this weekend, because maybe, I don't know, you're in quarantine and your garden's all done, or you have a little time on your hands for whatever reason. And by the way, you should be planting a garden. Also, check out the crash course. You can find that just by Googling it, finding it by going to peakprosperity.com. And the crash course is a full 28-chapter thing that I put out there that's very educational, just like these videos. Takes a logical step through why our economy was on an unsustainable trajectory well before COVID came along, which I think just put a little fuel on the fire for something that was already in motion, which was our debt-burdened economy was already struggling as is anyway. And if you don't have time for all 28 chapters, that'll cost you like 4.5 hours to bust through them all. And, they're like 3 to 10 minutes each. Then you could watch the accelerated crash course, and that's a grand total of 53 minutes start to finish. So you might look at that one if you wanted to, and then get back to me, and we can talk about all this over at peakprosperity.com. And by the way, again, I'm going to be pulling the cadence of these videos back, no longer daily videos. I'll put them out twice a week now. And if you want to follow my work and figure out and follow me daily, I'm over at peakprosperity.com every single day, because we got a great tribe of people over there. And I think since you made it to the end of this video, you're part of the tribe. You belong. So come on over and join up in that. We'd love to have you. That's all I have for now. Have a great weekend. I'm going to be in my garden this weekend. I hope you are too. And we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
WTF, What the Fed, Round 2. Last time we were together, we were very concerned because the Fed had added $200 billion to its balance sheet. Little did we know, a few weeks after we chatted, the coronavirus exploded across the world, and in response, the Fed and the world's central banks have now been printing trillions and trillions of dollars, making the magnitude that we were concerned about look positively quaint.
Isn't it optically awful that Bernanke, the past chairman, went to join Citadel, which was one of the first entities to receive a bailout? What hasn't changed would be an easier question, because so much has changed at this point in time.
1 in 5 of the workforce in America has lost their job in the last 6 weeks, and the market has gone up. We've had unemployment jump to 14.7% from 3.5%, and the market has gone up. We've seen consumer credit and consumer spending collapse to all-time lows, and the market has gone up.
Every emergency effort to save the system makes it more fragile.
The data is suggesting that there isn't any way out of this except to print the dollar into oblivion.
They're picking the 0.1% and the 1% over everybody else again.
This deflation will continue for a while, but then there's going to come a day where all of the currency printing comes back with a vengeance. We are now witnessing the death of this currency system.